Welcome to the Generation Lyme podcast. My name is Jesse Ruben. I'm on the board of Generation Lyme. I am joined by fellow board member Jennifer Hoffmann and one of our favorite hosts and community members, Grace. How are you ladies doing tonight?
Doing good. How are you?
Oh, I
Great.
am good. How you doing, Jennifer?
So good.
We are here to record an emergency podcast to discuss this very interesting article that showed up in the Daily Mail. If this is your first time joining us on the Generation Lyme podcast, welcome. Generation Lyme is a community for Lyme disease patients and people who support them. We tell patient stories, we host online meetups, and we, of course, record a podcast as well. And every once in a while, something happens in the news where we go, we need to talk about that. And this is one of those times. So this article focuses on a group of people on the internet called Spoonies. Grace, would you care to enlighten us on what exactly a spoonie is?
Yeah, so from what I understand, and I would say that I fall under this category, as most people with Lyme disease probably do, it comes from the spoon theory. So I believe it was a book, I don't want to misquote completely, but of a woman dealing with a chronic illness, and she was trying to explain to her family, like, what it's like to live with a chronic illness. And she's like, well, you have this many spoons of energy starting with the day. And then it slowly goes down, or you have less. Sick people have less than non-sick people. So people find comfort in identifying as a spoonie. I know I certainly have seen myself as a part of that group and still am, because Lyme disease takes a lot of spoons to just get through the day. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Yes. Well, we are very happy to have you here. Jennifer, can you just very briefly just sum up the sort of main points of this article? Or I guess just sort of like the shocking parts of it.
Oh, even better. Let's, yeah.
And then we'll
Okay.
do it, and then we'll really get into it a little bit.
Okay, I'm just gonna read like the first the headline of it because
Great.
I think that kind of will give the general impression of like that alone will indicate why we might have wanted to
It's
record a
great stuff.
podcast. I just love this. I'm for those not watching the video, I'm fidgeting horribly because this is
There's a
just
lot of
super uncomfortable.
sarcasm happening right now.
Right. Okay. So the headline is addicted to being sad. Teenage girls with invisible illnesses, known as quote spoonies, post TikToks of themselves crying or in hospital to generate thousands of likes as experts raise concerns over internet-induced wave of mass anxiety.
Very catchy title. Not at all, short. It's a
Super
paragraph long.
validating. Yeah, I mean, it's just like super validating
Yeah.
of health concerns and crises that could be befalling these poor teenage girls. I just
Yeah.
It's basically the article title equivalent of the facepalm emoji, I think, is my favorite way to sum it up.
right.
So let's just get into it real quick. Like, what were your first reactions when you saw this article posted? Because I know that a lot of people were posting it over the last couple days. This article actually came out 6 days ago, but it was really only like 2 days ago that uh, the internet really like picked up on it. So what was your first reaction when you saw this article posted? What was your first reaction when you read it?
Um, I was like confused at first. I was like, what is this? Is this an editorial? I don't really understand. Um, I truthfully, because of my own mental health and obviously with my own health struggles, could not read it in one sitting. I was that angry by the way that they were portraying these girls and this community. I was a teenager who was sick. I would have fallen in this category. And some of the terms and the quotes that are being used in this article were incredibly triggering, I think, to me. So it definitely was more, it was a less than, it wasn't like a sit down and digest all of it at once. I've had to read it finish it over the course of a couple days and really digest what they were trying to say. So
Yeah, same here. I was we were talking about this before we started recording, and this, like, pretty much unlike anything else that we deal with here, was something that I had a very hard time getting through. It's like my brain, my eyes, my nervous system is protecting me by being like, do not read this. It's, as I sit down to read it, my eyes focus on it. I'm ready to go, and my eyes immediately go blurry. It's a strange phenomenon, and it's just because, sure, it's triggering, it sucks, it touches on things that have happened in my own life and things that I know have happened to people in our community, and things that have been talked about so much in so many ways that are just so emotionally charged for the thousands of people that we deal with on a daily basis, and then even more people that we don't deal with, but who are also members of the broader chronic illness community and Lyme community, just overall Lyme disability, everything, human community. They're dealing with things like this and all having horrible experiences with dismissal and like ridicule and pain and suffering. And so when I sit down to read it, it's like, no, it's just, this sucks. And so my feeling about it is, and I'm sure we'll dive into this more, is like, to someone who sits down and writes this piece, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Oh
Pardon
man,
my language.
first F-bomb on the Generation Lyme podcast, I think. And you know what? It is rightly deserved. So I think this, first of all, there's a lot going on here. There's been a lot of controversy around it. What are some of the things that people are pointing out just right off the jump are going on here that just aren't really adding up and not really making sense?
there were pictures used of people who they weren't asked if their images could be used, which I know that they're posted online, but I still think that that's like morally probably should be asked in a situation like this. It seems like there are alleged that there are some misquotes also in this article. As we were talking about off camera, there's a lot of grammatical errors, so that's kind of embarrassing for a publication. Yeah, there's just a lot, like you can tell that it was just kind of thrown together, really. Um, they use kind of some, I don't want to say buzzwords because I feel like that's the wrong kind of term, but like medical gaslighting, they kind of threw that in there, but they didn't really get into the nuance of that. They kind of just like, these girls believe they're being medically gaslit, and then it was like, move on to the next thing. And I was like, wait a minute, that's a loaded.
Wait, let me just in case you're listening to this and you haven't read this, the
Yeah.
level of victim blaming that they managed to squeeze into what is not a very long article is really kind of staggering. So first of all, so there's also a lot of words in quotes that I don't know if they're putting it in quotes ironically. They're not necessarily quoting another person.
I'm
So
glad you're saying that,
so
because
one
that,
so
mhm.
there's the medical gaslighting part is super interesting. It says other they're talking about spoonies. Others suffer from quote like in quotes functional disorders which don't have any physical cause, cure, or a set of medical tests for diagnosis. Many of the women complain about being ignored and misdiagnosed by doctors and share their raw moments to give others an insight into what life is like with their disease. Others claim they are suffering from, quote, medical gaslighting, which includes being told by your doctor to lose weight to help your condition. So, just in these three sentences, they're implying that these people aren't actually suffering from any disorders because functional disorders are in quotes. Women are complaining about being ignored or misdiagnosed by doctors, not bringing up a super serious problem that is very real and recognized, that has a ton of validity. No, no, no. All these women are just complaining. and then others claim that they are suffering from medical gaslighting as opposed to they are being gaslit by the medical community. It's just all of the language is like, this is your fault. If you're sick, this is your fault. And as someone who has dealt with that, it's just like it's like being in the ocean and just getting hit by the waves, just one after the other. It's like language is so important. The terminology we use is so important. And these words and the implications of it are so dismissive. It's almost shocking. I mean, on one hand, I'm not surprised at all, and then on the other hand, I'm like, this was published in like the Daily Mail. This is not like Joe's blog. The Daily Mail is a massive news organization. So I'm just curious what your guys' thoughts are on that, because every time I read this thing, I like literally can't believe that this happened. Like, it feels like a joke. Like, it feels like a like torture chronically ill people Mad Libs come to life kind of a thing.
Yeah.
I will say, I think that the Daily Mail probably posts other things like this on other subjects, even though I fully agree. Like, I feel the same way about it. You know, pretty clearly we're all on similar pages with regard
Yeah,
to
I mean, I
feeling
think,
like this is a bunch of, you
are
know,
they like is it like a tabloid? Like, I just know that I've heard of them, which
right.
makes me think that they're reputable, but I've also heard of Fox News, so
I will, we're all like, this is a good time to say that everybody has their favorite news sources. And without saying, I don't even think it would be productive to qualify the Daily Mail as one type of news source or another during this particular podcast, but rather to discuss what this article says and what it gets right or wrong, because that is actually productive. And in this case, I totally agree. And I think I so appreciate that you pointed out the use of the quotation marks, because every time quotation marks are used, it's not only this. So the words or phrases inside of quotation marks are there to indicate, well, this either didn't happen, or this isn't real. So like, they are, quote, a spoonie. So a spoonie's not real. Quote, functional disorders. The quoting it implies that functional disorder isn't a thing. So that this is like a fictitious disease,
but
a
they're also
fictitious disorder.
it doesn't mention them like quoting anyone, and then the one like patient that
No.
they
Right.
supposedly
I know. I
interviewed,
want to.
she came out and said she didn't say any of these things.
Right. There was a TikToker who was, I don't know if that is like a light doxing or how that, because she did post something, but in a publication like this, there's a TikToker whose name, age, location, and disabilities were named in this article. She then posted a response to that on TikTok and was like, I didn't agree. I wasn't contacted about this, and I didn't agree to be mentioned in this article in this way. And they quoted me, but I didn't say this anywhere. I didn't say it to them. I didn't say it at all. And that is just irresponsible and also a heinous thing to do, especially in this light, because there are real world consequences to doing something like that, especially in this context. You have consequences with so many layers, because someone quoted as a liar, as like someone seeking medical care who doesn't necessarily need it, all of these things, is like, that has implications in your ongoing medical care, in your disability, whatever, if you might be able to get disability. It has implications in your job searches in the future and your employers, and let alone relationships and stuff like that. It is just, this article is it's a massive abuse of people who are already suffering, which we always react very poorly to. And it's really a shame, because anytime this happens and people talk about the massive groups of people who are out there talking about their chronic illness, whether it's Lyme disease or another chronic illness, whether they're spoonies or on a, these articles come out and they're either saying something about how Lyme's not real or people are over complaining about some illness. It's highlighting a problem, but completely missing the mark on the interesting and important thing that they should be talking about that would actually be freaking productive to explore. It's like, why are all these people sick? Why are all these girls being ignored? Why is it girls?
Care?
Yeah.
Right. And when there are so many studies, and I'm ready with the numbers, but like, why are there's so many studies?
Give us the numbers. You got the numbers? Give us the numbers.
There's so many studies demonstrating the disparity in healthcare for women across the world. And of course, this is even worse across like racial and socioeconomic divides. And this is not even up for debate. And that's not to say this is just gender bias. Like, and this shouldn't be like this shouldn't be
in
up
2022.
This is just a thing. And there are also studies that say there are studies that talk about gender bias that kind of cuts both ways if you only think about two genders. But there illnesses and conditions that are considered women's conditions are underdiagnosed in men. Conditions that are considered men's conditions are underdiagnosed in women because they're just not taught properly in terms of like how they present the lab work. The clinical manifestations are not taught like appropriately to diagnosticians and clinicians when they see people coming in complaining of things. We are implicitly socially conditioned to approach people in a certain way. And then in school, if you're not taught how to combat that and not taught the signs and symptoms that are and the lab work that would come along with a different body type, and whatnot, you're going to miss things. And so it should be no surprise to anyone that is happening. But here we go. To answer your question?
Yes.
The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists estimates that endometriosis affects 1 in 10 women of reproductive age. It takes an average of 6 to 10 years for an accurate diagnosis after the first symptoms appear. That's crazy. In heart disease, women have a 50% higher chance of getting incorrect initial diagnosis, even after having a heart attack. Stroke, women are about 30% more likely than men to have symptoms of a stroke misdiagnosed and to be erroneously sent home from the emergency room. And then even once they are diagnosed, they're less likely to receive the clot-busting drug TPA than men. Autoimmune diseases are statistically more represented in women than they are in men. And of course, I don't want to be like, we have our LGBTQIA plus meetup. This is not this is oversimplified, but these are the studies that are available. So for autoimmune diseases, it takes a person with an autoimmune disease an average of 4.6 years and 5 doctors before getting a correct diagnosis. So it's longer for women than it is for men, and it's long for everyone. Chronic pain, there are a lot of different studies on this one. Like anecdotally, we've heard all about it. We know that it's like, I think even when I was growing up, it was like women's issues is probably still like a kind of vibe that people thought, like I was taught that was like in the old days, this is what, that was a thing. And I was like, that's crazy. But still, women were expected to kind of hold more. And so it's a study found that when women go to the emergency room because of abdominal pain, not related to pregnancy or injury, they're less likely to get pain meds or opiates and waited longer to get meds. And when we go into different like mortality rates, there's more to discuss, but like I have like a very long list of things like this. And so I think all of this is just supportive to when we go back to an article like the one in the Daily Mail and we evaluate it critically and just go, all of this begs the question, why are you contributing to the problem? And to me, I think it's just for clicks. It's just greed.
I mean, this literally to me feels like, back in the 1800s when women were diagnosed with hysteria,
Yeah.
like
That's basically what he's saying.
this literally just feels like an extension of that. Like, how is this still happening right now? And also, and the point you made earlier, this article is going to do irreparable harm. There are going to be people who read this article. There are going to be parents of young women who read this article and go, I knew she was making it up. I knew there was nothing wrong with her. I knew this was all for show. And they're going to stop going to doctors, and they're going to stop supporting their kids, and they're going to completely medically gaslight them because they're going to feel justified because they read about it in this article. And that to me is like, it's just so heartbreaking. So, okay, so let's get into this article a little bit. Is there anything that either of you saw is there anything this article gets right? Let's like just get that out of the way. Is there anything of value in this article at all? Is it top to bottom completely devoid of any redeeming sentences, or is there anything in here where it's like, okay, you kind of have a point? So let's just start there.
Not any that stuck out to me, because I feel like when they would start to make a good point, then it would lead to somewhere else. Um, like there was kind of a point that was made. Sorry, Daily Mail, but I'm not sorry. But like there was a point that they were making that, some of these accounts are sponsored and they have sponsorships, so that could be adding to them playing up their symptoms. That was another thing that really pissed me off.
Too.
Yeah.
Look at these people. They're not
So
only are they
bad.
so desperate for attention on the internet, but they're even using it to exploit their audiences for money. No mention at all of the fact that a lot of these people can't physically work.
That's what I was going to
How
say.
dare they make money doing the only thing they
my
can do?
Yeah, because they can't move.
Yeah.
Because they can't leave their house.
Being
Yeah.
who they are.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Right. Yeah.
So okay, so that's
yeah.
obviously that's just a wrong thing. So Jennifer, is there anything in here that you think like in another context this would be helpful or interesting to cover? And then we'll get into what we don't like about the article.
This is going to be hard to explain. I think yes, like maybe, but I don't. To be very clear, I don't think that any good points were made in this article. I think this article is a fail.
Sorry, Daily Mail.
And
We're not big fans here today.
No, this article stinks. Like that's why I don't normally like what is wrong with you, this, but it was a response for a reason.
That's the podcast episode title. This period
boy.
Article period stinks period.
Grace, I really like the way you said it. It was like when they started to go down a track that may have been promising, it was just swiftly like big swerve somewhere else. So, and that's how I felt about it. There was one point where they said, where they talked about how there are online communities that these sick people join to feel less alone, and that's, I mean, that's why we're all here. Like that's Gen Lyme. That has benefited our lives. So we know that that's legit. We know that's positive. We agree with that. So you would think that was good, but that was quickly diverted to a statement on how these spaces support victim mentalities by supporting almost like competitive shows of sickness, like displays of sickness, and on top of like the entrepreneurial competition mentioned earlier. And that's pretty reductive to me. But the only thing that I will say, which is the thing that I think is hard to say, is that I think there is something that's common to like the human experience where it's possible to join a crew or be in part of a group and easily slide into that, like, I'm going to dive into this one thing because it's what we have in common. Easily slide into, I'm going to show my pain. I'm going to lean into my pain because it's what we have in common. Even if maybe you could talk about something else. It doesn't mean your pain isn't that high or that it's not real or not valid. So in some sense, like sometimes when people there are people in our community who dive in to that kind of conversation, and that serves them. And it serves them maybe all the time, or definitely serves them in the moment. And it's part of their healing, like emotional healing, that enjoying being here on this planet and finding people and connecting with them, even if it involves talking about something that they wish they didn't have. And other times, there are other points in the experience when people are like, I don't need or want to talk about this as much anymore or in this way. Or maybe they never did. And that's supportive to their healing at their time, in that time. I think we've seen that a lot in the broad community. So I think it's safe to call that a pattern. And I think it's all valid. Like whatever you need to do to support your enjoyment of your time on Earth is valid. So I think there could be something interesting to explore about like what type of community and the type of communication is most helpful to you, and even the changes in your needs at any given time. Sure, that could be interesting. Obviously that has no business being in this article because this person's not equipped to have it all to like have that conversation, and I don't know who is. It's hard to even hear. But it's so reductive and terrible to be like, all of these communities, just all they achieve is making people sick or sicker and keeping them sick, because obviously that's not true. These people are already sick. It's
Right.
not, none
They're
of it is
not
invented.
right.
That is a bogus claim.
So it could have been an article. There could have been an article about, hey, there are all these online communities. Thank God for all these people who are dealing with all of this suffering all over the world, and now they have a way to connect with each other and support each other. Like that could have been this article, right?
Yeah,
Like,
and some make people feel this way. Some have this other vibe, and you go where you need to, and
and like anything else, it's not for
whatever.
everybody, but it does a lot of good, and some people don't like it, and whatever. So now, I want to get into, because we said we weren't going to go for an hour, and I have a feeling we're going to go. We could talk about this for hours, but
Yeah.
I just want to go over just some of the things that just that you wish were there. What are like, if you could go back in time, and actually I just looked it up. A woman wrote this article, which I'm pretty surprised about actually. But if you could go back in time and have a conversation with the person who wrote this article, what would have actually been productive for them to write about, besides like, hey, there are all these people sick and they're communicating with each other? And I just, so what doesn't work? And for me, I just want to point out they saved the best for last for this article, because the last sentence of this article is just chef's kiss of a nightmare statement. So there's a quote attributed to no one at the end of the article, and it says, there might be something you're gaining by having this diagnosis, like that it's keeping you from a job that you hate or from responsibilities that you don't want to do. I audibly yelled out loud when I read that. Like,
Oh.
that somebody would think to put this, and I don't know who said this. I don't know where they got this from. I don't know if they just put it in there and put it in quotes.
They're saying it's from that TikToker that we were talking about
Right,
earlier.
that who never said any of that. So it's a quote that they attribute to a 27-year-old that she definitely didn't say. So who knows where they got it from. But so instead of just missing the obvious issue, which is there's an entire generation of chronically ill people, and what we would have to do as a society to deal with that. Instead, in one sentence, we're going, well, we have all these people, all these young kids who don't want to work anymore because they don't like their job, and they want to avoid responsibility. So instead of just, being responsible adults, they're creating these entire very sick personas so they don't have to deal with their lives. That's the explanation that we're supposed to buy here as readers.
Yeah. I think the thing that really bothered me too was that the title is geared at teenagers, teenage sick people. I know I talked about this a little bit in the beginning, but um, that's already a very vulnerable group.
Yeah.
First of all, you didn't even really talk about like the people in the article. The patient that they quoted is not a teenager, so it's very strange. It gives off a cadence of like internet bad, get him off TikTok, like we very like Chris Hansen kind of like you know what I'm talking about, like that's what I felt a little bit from
For
that.
sure.
And to me, I just think it's very out of touch. um there is a broad, like Jennifer was saying, I think there is a broader conversation to be had for the impact of making communities, how we interact with each other when we have an illness. We're not a monolith. We're all, I think that's what's beautiful, at least about Generation Lyme, is we're all very different people. We all have been brought together by a really crappy circumstance, and like we're able to kind of sit in it with each other, and that sometimes that's helpful. And then like in other weeks, I don't have anybody coming to my meetups because they don't need it that week, and that's okay. um but yeah, that really bothered me, just as somebody who, and this is completely personal, but I lost everything at 16. I got sick. Nobody believed me that I was sick. And I suffered in a bed, and I still suffer in a bed at 22. So, and I'm trying to make a life around it. It's impossible some days. You know what I mean? Like I'm in college. I don't know how I'm doing it. I just talked about getting an internship. I don't know how I'm going to do that either. I
Because
work a
you're
job.
amazing. Because you're an absolute badass human being.
Well, thank you very much. But
That's true.
um, it's just it's frustrating to me, the idea of like I feel that attitude. Like my mom and I were talking about it because my mom actually went through a similar health journey as a kid as well. So when you're talking about endometriosis, my mother had endometriosis in the 80s, and at that time she was
Oh
too young
boy.
to have that. You're too young to have that. It's not real. And she suffered for years, like 30 years. Um, and unfortunately there might be a genetic component of that. That's a whole other podcast about my life. But what I'm saying is like the idea that people enjoy suffering really pisses me off, that they would even insinuate that. um yeah, it
For
made me really
clicks
angry.
and
Yeah.
likes and follows and
Yeah.
hearts, as if
Yeah.
that's the most important thing.
Yeah, because to be honest with you, if their posts about them in the hospital crying are making you uncomfortable, it should. You should want to figure out a way to help them. You should want to figure out a way to make the healthcare system better. It should make you uncomfortable. It should make you feel weird to see a 14-year-old hooked up to an IV.
Preach,
Sorry,
Grace.
guys.
Hence my question, what is wrong with you?
Yeah.
We
Like, how
choose
can,
to, it's
yeah.
like, these are, yes.
But
Yes.
similar to like diagnosing women with a medical condition called hysteria. To me, this is similar to like kids these days. Like they're so dramatic, they don't know anything.
It's
Like look at these kids like crying over the Beatles in the 60s. What's wrong with them? What's wrong with these kids? They're so emotional. They just
right.
want attention. They're so self-centered. This is that to like the nth degree. Like look at them. They need attention so badly. They're pretending to be incredibly ill. I just
This is written like it's a TikTok trend,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, that's
which
interesting.
which is not
Which,
true.
such an oversimplification of what's happening here, which is that
Yeah.
like it's removing all the humanity from the victims of that are and we talk to these people all the time because they come to our these are the people that come to our meetups who are so desperate and so isolated and so alone. Thank God we have this thing called the internet where they can connect with each other. But it doesn't. First of all, I thought it was interesting that Lyme disease is not mentioned at all in this article. There's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, fibromyalgia. There's things that we deal with that and have been diagnosed with and stuff. But Lyme disease does not come up anywhere in this article, which of course I think is ridiculous. But I what how what can we do? How do we fix this? Can we fix this?
I have some thoughts on this.
I thought you might.
Um,
And I hope you'll share them with us.
I'll try. First, Grace, to what you said, similarly, this article or whatever it is also reads very similarly close to home for me. It's like this could be this is me. You know, this, and it's wild because it's like reading other people's thoughts on me or, you know, one of us. And in the before times, before we changed their minds, or, you know, before we did all this hard work and maybe caught a few back on our side or new people or whatever, it's very strange. But also knowing what we know now. Oh, side note, this is something that I wanted to mention before, and I don't want to forget. Because you know, they use the air quotes around gaslighting to kind of question its legitimacy. It's very real. But because this has been such a mainstream issue, like questioning the pain of young girls and women and children, and like, you know, it's like kids in pain, it's like walk it off. So this is all very normalized. We should also talk about how common it is for the kids who have these conditions to start adopting this as their own internal monologue. And the internet, the TikTok and the Instagram communities are actually very helpful to getting yourself to stopping like gaslighting yourself or allowing this other idea to gaslight
Totally.
you or whatever it is, because it's like, hey, yeah, you're not alone, you're not crazy, you're not the only person in the world with these symptoms. It's really useful, and the only way to find people like this is to go online a lot of the time. So it's a valuable tool, and it's not a trend because it might be like TikTok now, it's Instagram in the past couple of years, and before that it might be like you find a support group in your local community, and before that it's you write a letter to your newspaper, I don't know, like whatever it
Yeah,
is.
you
But
do nothing.
you
You
do like
just
a
are home.
radio show, whatever. There's stuff that people do. I don't know, I'm trying to think of like, but there's stuff that people do. But what I think that we do to combat this is what we're doing now, honestly. Keep sharing the reality, because it makes this stuff sound more and more ridiculous. I mean, I think before, and not that long ago, this article would have had fewer air quotes in it. So a lot of these words, which are starting to become normalized, like gaslighting and functional disorder, or some other, I'm trying to go through other words in there, like but there are several words in there that have now become more commonly used in the public lexicon. So if you want to make people think that they're BS, you have to put air quotes on them, because otherwise they'll read them as being legitimate, you know. And I think that that's something worth noting. Also, they're making fun in an article like this of the numbers of people who are on these online communities posting their experiences. But that's all well and good, except for the fact that these communities outnumber the people writing these crap articles about them by probably the hundreds of thousands at this point.
Totally.
So
Totally.
like
Massive
whatever.
massive issue, and they just
Yeah.
completely miss the mark. I mean,
Also, yeah, totally,
mm,
totally missed the mark. Also, I think one thing is not like we're recording this podcast largely for our own community because so many people in the community commented on it and we're hurt and we're upset, but like we don't have to go writing on, we don't give them clicks or comments or whatever. We don't need to give them this kind of attention because I'm just still so tired of us as a Lyme community or chronic illness community of operating on like the defensive, like we always have to combat. It was
yeah,
coming
and
at us with like, that's not real.
justify,
Yeah.
and
And we're
yeah,
like, we're right. So,
right.
and I think more and more it's coming out, our stance is changing. And, and that is due in large part to several things, several efforts that our community members and nonprofits are working on. And like just the fact that we're coming together and we're talking, and it's not like because the attention is bad or changes that we're like, oh, you know what, never mind, I'm gonna try something else. So I think we're okay.
Well, it looks like this article was taken from. So I just looked up what Common Sense News was, and it looks like the original title for this article was called Hurts So Good, written by another woman,
Yeah.
which I think is just bananas insane because I can assure you that it's not so good. And also, the
Yeah.
slogan for Common Sense News is honest news for sane people, implying that we
Bodes well.
are not that. This all of this, I just think this is all insane. Okay, so I just to wrap this up because I want to end this on like a slightly more hopeful note.
Yeah.
What, Grace, we'll start with you. Like, if somebody's listening to this who considers themselves a member of the Spoonies, or just is dealing with illness and dealing with being shut down by the medical community and being gaslit by the people in their lives, what would you say to somebody who falls under those categories? What would you say to other people who see themselves in this article and are scared about what's going to happen to them?
Um, I have a lot, I guess. But I would say, I understand where you're coming from. Um, I've lived it, and that's why, like I talked about at the beginning, this was so triggering for me because all of the way, the verbiage, the air quotes was very triggering. Like it felt like because what Jennifer said was true. Like the internal talk that you have is sometimes worse than what a medical professional says to you after a while. So what I would say really is, and I know that this is kind of sounds like reductive, but practicing like self care. If you can't read things like this and you're like, I can't look at this anymore, don't do it. I actually had a conversation with my therapist today, and she looked at me and she said, "For your own mental health, please stop reading this." Which I was like, I have to record podcasts about it, but I'll stop reading it after that. But but I would also just say like, at the end of the day, there is always hope. Um, and again, I know that it feels far away because when you're sick and you're in pain from sun up to sundown and in pain when you're asleep, it's like, how am I ever going to get out of this? um and if nobody believes me anyway, why should I keep trying? I felt that in my own life as a young teenager and in my early 20s. So when everything is falling apart, I promise you that there is a silver lining. And I know that that sounds cheesy, but you'll wake up one day and you'll be like, I'm glad that I kept trying to advocate for myself and continue to advocate for yourself. I know it's exhausting, and I have been blessed with a wonderful mother who could do it for me when I couldn't do it for myself. But um, your feelings and your pain is valid, and like, just because some people are telling you it's not, they don't live in your body. So keep advocating for yourself, keep going forward, because there is a way forward after this and a way to live life not always in pain. That's what I would say. So
I love that. And Grace, thank you so much for being here. You're awesome and such an invaluable member of the Generation Lyme community. Jennifer, is there anything you would like to say to wrap it up? I was also thinking this is our second emergency podcast we've recorded about a news article. Wouldn't it be great if there was one that was so great for our community we had to talk about it, as opposed to we are so horrified we have to talk about it? So hopefully one day we'll have one that's like so amazing we'll have to talk about it.
I'll write it.
Yeah,
I was
there you
gonna
go.
say, yeah, it's coming from here, so let's do it, Grace. Let's talk about your article. You talk. I got a delivery.
Oh no, you got a delivery. All right. Well, I think we
I
should.
do have something I want to say.
Oh, okay. I was gonna wrap it up, but let's. Do you have to get your package?
No,
Oh my
it's
God,
fine.
I love what's happening right
It's
now.
fine.
We are a
We are-
professional organization, Jennifer.
No, it's fine. It's fine. They'll just leave it. The thing that I wanted to say was that if you are bothered by this piece, if you are bothered by this piece, we believe you. You know, if there are people in your life who treat you like that, and you know, if you're bothered by it, there's a reason. It's not foreign to you in some way. And I think it's worth saying that there are lots of people who believe you, who know that what you're going through is real, no air quotes, and who want to hear from you with whatever you're experiencing, whether it's really rough or really great or medium or whatever. And there's nothing wrong, only good about connecting with people, because that is a huge life-giving thing. And on a personal note, the last time that we talked about a crappy article, I was like, I still felt like I had word salad issues. And I had very similar ideas about the article, you know, and the issues, like the problems that came up and the highlights that could have been hit that were met. And I think this time, like, I just hearing myself talk about what I wanted to say, it's like even if that's just, it was better for me, for me. And so even if that's just a small, this isn't designed to be self-indulgent. This is designed to be like, if you think that you can't get any better, I'd like to tell you that you can.
Totally. I mean, I know that I talk to people all the time who are convinced that they're never going to get better. All the time, unfortunately. All right. I think we're going to wrap it up here. On behalf of Grace and Jennifer, my name is Jesse, and I just want to thank you so much for listening. If you would like more information on Generation Lyme and everything that we offer, you can check us out online at genlyme.org, GENLYME. There's information about our meetups and our podcasts and Generation Lyme Day, which is our holiday that we made up because we are awesome, and lots of other great stuff. Please rate and review us 5 stars if you've gotten this far in the podcast. We really, really appreciate you. Ladies, as usual, everything you said was incredible. I so appreciate your honesty and your candor and your passion and everything you're doing for the chronically ill community. You guys are both superheroes, and we are all lucky to have you fighting for us. So thank you for everything that you guys do. And
Right back at you, Jesse.
oh, thank you very
Okay.
much. I'm just hosting. Thank you very much for listening, and we will be back very soon with more episodes of the Generation Lyme podcast. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully there aren't any other horrible news articles we have to react to in the near future. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks, guys. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.